Afternoon everyone, popping in for our usual Friday chat. This is the pre-show, so let me just work out why I'm hearing that. Oh, I know why. Bear with me for a second. Now let me bring up the pre-show little header just so we know where we are. We've got around about nearly 10 minutes to go before we actually start the show officially. Boy, is it hot today, extremely hot. I'll talk about it a little bit too when I start the show, but I think we had a minimum last night of around about was it 94 degrees overnight was the minimum, and today we're going to be about 107 or something. So yeah, it's a bit crazy, the weather at the moment. Let me just turn off Siri so we're not going to get that. Yeah, it's been nuts.
And comment and subscribe.
Oops, where are we?
And that's where I'll leave it. Thank you very much for watching.
That's Jared Poland. Let me reduce this down. Sometimes Siri comes on if you don't turn it off, and I hate that. And I'll put my watch on silent as well. I've even got my air conditioner on full, and it's still quite warm in here. I should be having a Corona. I just noticed Chris said have a Corona. It is a Corona day, but unfortunately I've got to shoot this afternoon. I'm going into Melbourne to shoot a model, and I want to stay sober. I might have one dinner time though before we actually start, because I'm going to shoot around about 7. I want to get the nice golden hour here. Hopefully the weather, there's meant to be a change coming into Melbourne around about 3 or 4 o'clock. That's meant to drop the temperature about 20 degrees. So we're going to be around 20 when we do the shoot. So I'm so hanging out for that. Because, like I said, we've had 2 days now of around about 40, well, it was 46 yesterday here, which is, I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit, probably 106, 107. And we've got another hot day today. It's about the same today, actually. It's 44 here now at the moment. So it's extremely hot. So I don't want it to be that hot when we're out doing a shoot, because that'd be terrible. I wish that air conditioner would work well. I've got the air conditioner pumping away and it's hardly even hitting me. I'm going to see if I can put it on higher. I probably should be here naked, but I'd probably get demonetized. It might be horrifying for you as well. It'd be interesting. So let me bring up the chat, because I'm just saying hi to everyone until the show starts. If you are coming in and you don't want to watch all this pre-show, just skip to where you see the Oastler images sign, and the little pre-show down the bottom will disappear. So if you don't want to watch that, skip. It'll also be down below. I'll put a timeline of showing where everything is. So that's how that'll all work. So Casper's just saying hi. Kelly's also saying hi. Oreo's saying g'day. G'day, Oreo. Haas is saying thumbs up. Thanks for that. Michael's in here. Barry is saying hi, David. Dane is also saying, where are those presets? Oh, dear. I don't know what you're talking about, Dane. Have you ordered some presets off someone? Steve Wag said, greetings all. Hero says, greeting all. It's coffee time. I wish. I've got to behave myself because I've got to shoot this afternoon. David's saying good evening. Chris is saying hello, David. Nice day in Los Angeles for a Corona. Mr. Meredith said happy birthday, David. It's not my birthday. What does that mean? Is that someone else? Mark said, yep, boiling up here. Oh, it's so hot today. Steve Wake said we had 46 yesterday. Yeah, you would have, Steve. Well, it's like that today here. It's crazy. MJ says thumbs up. Barry says, nice and cool in Brisbane. I know it's ridiculous at the moment down here. Alexander said, we got 44 degrees here, which is 111.2. Power is out. That's what I'm worried about too, because they've been saying the power's failing because there's so much demand in air conditioning everywhere. They're putting rolling blackout. So if I do disappear off the net, you know what's probably happened. We've had a rolling blackout done or they call them brownout. And I'm sweating even in here, and I've got the air conditioner on 20. Where else have we got? Dominic says, hi, went from cold Montreal, Canada. I know it's funny how we're the total opposite, isn't it? Mike's saying, hello, David and everyone. Rui said, hello, everyone from Alabama, where it's 37 Fahrenheit. Good day from hot Thailand. We're probably hotter than you today. MJ says we're getting hammered with snow. Well, that'd look beautiful. I see, we don't get snow here, so I do love seeing it when I go up into the mountains. Philip says, good evening. Viking says, hey, everyone. Mike says, ice, coffee time with David. Yeah, I'm going to have a lemonade today. I'm staying good because I've got to shoot this afternoon. Or late today. I know if I have one, I'm going to want 2 coffees, and this is the problem. So I've got to behave. Michael said 106, 107. Ouch, yeah, it's pretty hot, Michael. You get that, though, in your summer, though, don't you, over there in LA? Viking says, just had -10 weather in New England. Don't be mentioning air conditioning. There's another MC-11 update. Yeah, I'm going to talk about that. 42 Pro says, good evening. Carl says, Fuji. Says, weather has definitely been bizarre. It was 19 Fahrenheit yesterday, but tonight it's 38 degrees Fahrenheit. So also for the people in Europe, because I think they're Celsius like we are, it's 44 now, Celsius here. And like I said, overnight it was about 35 degrees Celsius overnight. So that was a minimum last night, which was really hot. MJ says, did you see Jared's attempt to demonize TNC? What's that? What was that about? Tony and Chelsea, did he? What did he say about to them? I haven't seen it. MJ says F-bombs everywhere. Really? Oh, demonetize. Ah, I see what you're saying. Oh, that's funny. Karen Watts. G'day, Karen. Nice to see you in here. I'm popping up tomorrow up at Echuca. So let me know if you're going to be there, because Kerry and myself will be there. We're looking forward to it, actually. Boston says, seems Matt Granger hates Sony when trying to test a Sony. I know. I'm not sure whether that was deliberate. That was really interesting, and it was funny that you think he's shooting an AFA and testing the camera out, particularly after he had, well, Sony apparently had given screen dumps of what the camera should be set at, and he's shot the A9 before, and he's shot plenty of cameras. He should know that you use AFC if you're going to get the best tracking out of the camera, and I noticed he said AFA. He's probably surprised that people picked up on that on the screen. It just shows you've got to be careful if you're sharing your screen, that you don't get blown out of the water. He really should redo that test. I think in the comments he did say that he was going to redo it, and I think he should, to make it clear. Because there's big differences between what he was getting in the focus and what everyone else was getting in the focus. So either everyone is lying or he's telling the truth, and I don't know. So he really should have another one out and, you know, clear that up for everyone. That's pretty important. I laughed when I saw what he did. I thought, oh no, you're going to cop a slamming over that, and he did. He did cop a slamming. You know, if you're going to put out a report like that, I would have probably taken it off after I'd noticed that, because clearly he hadn't used the camera correctly. He should have probably deleted that video. I know then he would have lost all of that footage, but he should have probably redone it or something and tested it properly. Michael says 106. Yeah, ouch, I read that before. Viking says, just had -10 Fahrenheit weather here in New England. Don't be mentioning air conditioning. I read that before. Haas said, weather has definitely been bizarre. It was 19 yesterday, but tonight it's 38. I read those. I'm going back again. Sometimes it jumps. What else? Hero says, do you think you're going to sell all your Sony gear and switch to the Beast? I'm going to talk about that shortly, Hero. Karen says, someone looking at my boat, so may not make it. Have to catch up next time. No worries, Karen. 42 Pro says 3000 micro four thirds camera, super niche. Right, yeah. I'm going to talk about that camera, the Olympus, as the second story, actually, so stay tuned for that. Alexander says, Olympus looks dead on arrival. Can't believe people were saying it would match the A9. Long Rider says, I don't think Granger hates Sony, but he doesn't take the time to learn the menu. Well, I'm not sure that's true, Long Rider, because he does always seem to bag Sony. I mean, I remember when he first got the A9, he bagged that too. He is a real Nikon fanboy, and I think he does tailor everything towards Nikon. That's probably one of the problems. Thanks so much, Long Rider. Really appreciate that. So I'm not sure that he is totally upfront about Sony, and, you know, I don't know. I mean, that was a pretty silly mistake to make. And he should have been more upfront about it, and he only sort of corrected it when he someone kept saying, you know, you've got it on the wrong setting. So I'm not convinced. He really needs to redo that and do it from scratch. Like I said, that was so flawed, that footage, that he really should have taken that off. Thanks so much for the donation, Long Rider. Really appreciate that, though. Let's have a look. Lowell says, how are we going for time anyway? I'm going to start in a minute. Lowell says, Olympus should have at least matched the floppy screen with the body size, maybe a 5-inch HDR, especially if they are calling it pros. Yeah, I'm going to talk about that in detail in a minute. Oreo says, here snowing and we're freezing. Stacey said, good evening from Northwest United States. Hull said, Jared blasted out the demonetization language. Haha, that's funny. I wonder if they will demonetize it then. Hero said, do you think you're going to sell all your Sony gear? I've read that before. No. Michael said, Matt has always been a Sony hater. Yeah, and I tend to agree. I think he has, Michael. That's one of the problems. What else have we got? Long Rider said thumbs up. Viking Studio says, yeah, Matt Granger definitely hating on Sony every chance he can. Altric says, hello everyone. Hero says, Granger drinks haterade. President says, that's true, Matt is super Nikon fanboy. It's clear all of his comparison videos. Michael says, totally agree with you, David. Seen many of his videos bashing Sony. That's the problem. Like, if you're going to be you know, we call it here in Australia, fair dinkum is the word that we use here. And fair dinkum means you've got to tell the truth, you know, and I sometimes bash other brands, but I also bash Sony if they do the wrong thing as well. Check out when I put out that Sony should update the firmware, and it happened a couple of weeks later. I'm not saying they listen to me, but I do bash Sony when they bring things out. I also told you how I was disappointed with the A6400 release. Calling that a vlogging camera is not true by Sony. I don't believe that is a really good vlogging camera due to the flaws that I mentioned before. No IBIS, the microphone attachment is a problem. Yes, you can add grips to it, but then you're starting to have a bigger body. And if you're after a small body and you like the Sony a6400 and you love that size, well, then the second you're starting to have other attachments to it, it becomes fiddly and more cumbersome, and that's half of the problem with this. The other thing too is the second you start to add attachments onto the bottom of those, you then sometimes have problems with changing batteries. Not all of them, but some of them you do, and it's just a pain. So I don't really believe that was a fantastic release for vloggers, and they were calling that a vlogging camera. So it's not a bad release, but I just think they probably could have done better. So I am honest with you all, and I always will be. So anyway, I'm going to crop over to the show, so bear with me. I'm going to take this pre-show off and bring up the logo, and we're going to start. G'day everyone, popping in for our usual weekly live Sony rumours and news. If you don't like hearing or looking at Sony Alpha rumours, because that's the site often that I grab images to discuss, please don't put in the comment box down below that why do I just read off Sony Alpha? Don't watch, so just switch off now. So please, if you're not interested in Sony rumours and having a discussion like a bunch of mates around a table, switch off, because it's not for you. Remember, this is a Sony show. This is why I'm wearing this Sony t-shirt. This is why I've got the Sony cup here that you're seeing now. I am going to talk about a couple of other stories, but this is a Sony show. So if you're not interested in that, goodbye. Let me just pull this. Now, no beer today, guys, because I shouldn't say beer. No coffee today, guys, because I'm actually got a shoot tonight in the city at the Docklands. So I've got to be good, because I know if it's so hot today, like it's 43 here Celsius, which is about 105 or something Fahrenheit. It's so hot that I know if I have one, I'm going to want two. So I'm being good. I've got to stay good because I've got this shoot this evening. So bear with me. Well, don't bear with me, but I'll probably not be as loopy as usual because I'll be sober. Still tastes good though. So a couple of things. Stay tuned for that. The model that I'm shooting tonight is stunning. Just wait till I show you the video that I'm going to produce of that. It's going to be really great fun. Can't wait for it, actually. Really looking forward to it. I'm going to move all around the Docklands and do some shooting around there, so I'm really excited about that. So stay tuned for that. Now, why people are on with the start of the show, I wanted to talk about a new show that I'm going to be using next week. As from next week on a Tuesday, it's a Wednesday here, I think it's 12 o'clock Melbourne time. I think that was the time. It'll be, so it's what, about 2 hours earlier than what I've started today for you guys. I'm going to be doing another live show, and that's going to be a weekly live show that we're doing. It's going to be fantastic. I've got another shooter that's going to work with me on the day, and I'll discuss who that is in a minute. The good part about this is today's show is all about Sony and anything sort of related to Sony, and also rumours and things like that, updates and all that sort of stuff. The show that we're going to do on the Wednesday, it's Tuesday Australian time, is going to be all about cameras in general. So we will talk about everything. We're going to open it up to everything because I want to make it more generic, the other show. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to pick a weekly story that we'll discuss. We're then also going to show an image each week that we've taken over time, and we're going to break that image down and talk about what we were thinking, you know, how did we light it, what settings did we use, all that sort of stuff. So that's also going to be a breakdown. We'll talk about new camera releases, things like that, and we'll also discuss lenses, all these other things, but more general. I mean, a lot of it sometimes may still be about Sony because that's all I've got, but I will still try and talk about other cameras and things like that, so I will try and make it more open. We're also going to have weekly tips and things like that we're going to bring into that as well. So it's going to be a really exciting show for you. Now, the other photographer, I'm hoping most of you know him. If you don't, I'm going to recommend that you subscribe to him, is Aron J Anderson. Aron comes up with some amazing things, and he's also amazing with videography as well. And he's now starting to do a lot in photography as well, and his photography is beautiful. Conrad, thank you so much for that. Really appreciate that donation. So Aron's photography is amazing, but let me just show you the intro of the show first, and then I'll talk to you quickly about what the show's going to be about.
You're watching the #1 YouTube live stream, hosted by David Oastler, Aron J Anderson. Get the latest in photography news, gear talk, tips and tutorials. We are here. We are live behind the photo. Learn, grow, share.
So that'll give you an idea about what the show is going to be. Like I said, it's going to be more open. So I want this sort of to be more about photography in general. And then I'm hoping that you guys really like this sort of thing that we're going to do between us. And it should be fantastic, and I'm really excited about where the show can go in the future. It will be a weekly show. It'll be on that same time each week. The first one is next week. Now, I'm going to host the first one. The second one, Aron is going to host on his channel. That's why I'm saying I encourage you to subscribe to Aron. It's going to be really good fun, and I'm really excited about how it's going to be. Aron is really keen as well. And I'm hoping that you all sort of jump on board with it. And, you know, you can start to give us ideas about what you'd like to be include in that as well. So, yeah, anyway, I just wanted to show you that. So that's what's coming up. I'm really excited about what it's going to be. Again, this has nothing to do with the Patreon that I'm running or anything like that. This is totally free on the normal channel for you guys, but really, really excited. So if you haven't subscribed to Aron, I will put his YouTube channel down below. So you can go and check. His YouTube reviews are fantastic. He has recently, or he's going to release eventually, a video showing how he's made a flip-out screen for the A7 III. So he does some wonderful stuff with cameras and mods and things like that he tends to come up with. So we're going to have a ball anyway, and he's also a great videographer and great photographer. So stay forward for that show. Aaron's just joined us now, so Aaron's there. Yeah, thanks for joining us, Aaron. Can't wait for the show next week. All right, so let's go anyway and talk about the next story, or the first story. Let me just put down here. So let me have a look. So let me go back to here. Oh, now before I do that, before I do the first story, guys, please join, and this is more important now, because please join the photography and videography school. The reason why I'm pushing this is because this is really going to tie into what we're doing in that other live show particularly. Now, there's around about 3,600 and odd people now on this group. So it is really starting to grow fast now. And I'm tailoring this for you guys. This is where you can come in, ask questions of both Aaron and myself. Aaron is a moderator in this side as well. You're going to be able to ask questions about the show. We'll have other things on there that we'll post. But this also is a site where you can post anything to do with your photography work. So anything about your web pages, your Instagram feeds, any live YouTube, not live, but any YouTube videos that you want to share. So I haven't got restrictions on this. The only restriction is you can't go live to it. Apart from that, it's just somewhere where we can all get together. It's also a very positive site because I'm not allowing any prima donnas in there that give negative content or anything. If they do, they'll just be booted. So you'll be able to ask for critiques in there without getting slammed, and that's the important thing about this show. So please join us in there. It really is growing fast, and like I said, I really want you all to get involved in that. When people ask me questions now, I'm getting a lot of personal questions on Facebook through email and also through Messenger. I'm keeping that for the Patreon users, the personal messages, but if you do want to contact me, I'm just saying in those messages, please ask in the photography videography school, because what's happening now, as my channel's growing, I'm getting more and more people asking the same question over and over again, and it's far easier to point them into there where they'll get multiple answers, and then everyone can learn from those questions. That's why I'm trying to point people towards that photography videography school. All right, so let's go to the first story. I wanted to bring this up because this is quite interesting. Let me just move this so we can get the whole thing. I'll have to reduce this size down a bit. Sony Alpha have said that, let me just move this. There's a announcement that they're predicting coming. Let me just fix that. There's an announcement coming within 3 to 4 weeks. Now, what they're saying is that it's going to be a new E-mount lens, and they're saying that they've got an SR5. Now, we've got WWPI coming up first in late February, and there's also CP Plus coming up on February the 28th. So they're saying whatever is announced at WWPI will probably also be announced at CP Plus. Now, some of the things that they're talking about, now just as a thing there, WWPI starts on the 25th of March, and it goes into, of Feb, sorry, and it goes to March the 1st. So that's the timeline that's sort of involved there. Basically, what they're saying is there's an SR5, that there's a 90% chance that we're not going to see the A7S III, and I've said all along that that probably is not the place for that. If there is going to be an A7S III announced, it will be NAB, and that's what you would think is probably going to happen. So I'm still sticking to that timeline, but there's other ones there too, which are, there's an SR4, 70% chance that it will be a new 135 GM. Now, we know these lenses are coming, it's just a matter of when. There's going to be a 135 1.8 GM, and it's saying there was the published patent for this 2 weeks ago, so we know it's coming. It's definitely coming fairly soon. There's an SR4 that there's a 70% chance that there could also be a new APS-C E-mount lens, but there's no specs yet on that, so that's also a 70% chance. There's a 50% chance it's an SR3 that there'll be a new high-end APS-C E-mount camera with the EVF in the middle, which is based on your sort of 7.3 body, coming out at that time at WWPI. But before I switch to talking full screen, I'll just go through this too. Possible rumours of a new RX1R, but they've got nothing on that yet. They've also got information there about a new 35mm 1.8 lens, but they're not sure about that launching yet. There's also rumours of a 500-600 telephoto GM. That's going to come, we know that, because Sony have to have those long lenses for sport, and really they're the only lenses missing now for sport and wildlife. So we know that that is going to come. It's just a matter of time before that actually comes. And the exciting one for me down the bottom there is it's saying Tamron should launch a 70-200 FE like lens. Sigma should also announce lenses too. Now, the interesting thing is, I had a number of people contact me and say, David, it's not going to happen. Because there's no camera patents announced at this stage, that there's going to be no camera announced at any of these expos or wedding events or whatever they are that are coming up. But it's not true, because if you look at this line down the bottom here, it says down here, note, Sony has not yet replaced any new camera in Asian agencies. Still, last year, the A7 III cameras was registered in Asian agencies one day before the announcement at the WWPI show. So that shows you that just because they haven't announced it yet, when the A7 III came out, they gave 1 day's notice before that came out. So we could still potentially get a A7000 released at WWPI. Now, I'm not saying that's going to happen. I've said over and over again, and I've been let down by Sony. And I'm going to come on the screen again going, oh, I'm upset again. It is going to happen when it's going to happen. And I'm hoping that it will be WWPI for the A7000. It's clear looking at those rumours that I don't think it's going to be the A7S III. The only chance we've probably got of the A7S III is going to be NAB. That's the earliest that we're going to see that. But I think there's a good chance that we'll get the Sony 135. There's a reasonable chance that we'll get the Sony 35 1.8 and a new APS-C lens. The exciting thing for me is there's a good chance now that we're going to get the launch of that 70-200mm fairly soon. I mean, they haven't given a timeline on that, but fairly soon. Which is exciting. Let me just check. Was that someone giving a donation? MJ gave a donation, $4.99. Have a coffee on me, mate, to beat the heat after the shoot. Thank you so much, MJ. Really appreciate that. So it's really exciting. I mean, at least this thing's still ticking over. Admittedly, though, I am desperately waiting for Sony to bring out another video camera. I did a wedding video on the weekend last week. And I used, because I wanted to still use my A9 for photography, I used the A6 400, I think it was, or the A6 300 on the gimbal. And look, the results are still quite beautiful. You can have a look at that. The wedding results are still gorgeous, but it's nowhere near as sharp as what my A9 is. And so I'm not going to do that again. I'll use my A9 like I have been. So I definitely need another camera for video alone that I can stick on a gimbal. Hopefully shoot 4K 60p that has the amazing new autofocus that the A9 is going to get. And whatever they bring out in the new cameras is going to have that new A9 autofocus. Now, it's on the A6 400. It's going to be put into the A9 as a firmware update. So we're basically sure that it's going to be on any new release of cameras now that Sony put out into the future. So that's what I'm hanging out, to have that amazing tracking. At the moment, I tend to use center focus. If I can use the new firmware and then, mark around the bride that's walking down the aisle and it tracks her without losing that focus, the new Sony's cameras are going to be incredible gimbal cameras. So I'm really excited about that. So let me open up the chat because I want to discuss this with you all and see what people are having to say. Where did I start? Hero says, just found a Nikon D200 for $44. Is that a good buy? I never had that camera, Hero, so I can't comment on that. Someone else may. I had the D90. I had the D4S, the D810. They were the cameras that I had. I never had the D200. So someone else in the chat may be able to help you with that. Michael says, David, it sounds like a Hooters radio spot. I love it. Casper said, you guys drinking coffee on the new show? Oh, we'll have to discuss that. We might drink coffee on the new show, Casper. What else have we got? MJ says, Punk, enjoy, brother. Hero says, coffee time radio. Casper said, Hooters, woohoo. Altric says, can't wait. I'll be drinking coffee. Yeah, I'm going to be probably drinking coffee too. I mean, that would be good. I used to love Dignation years ago. I used to watch. I don't know whether any of you guys used to watch it. I used to love sitting down watching those guys get drunk as they were actually talking. We can drink coffee as long as we don't show that we're drinking coffee. Don't build your future on Facebook. Build it on your personal Squarespace message board. I love it. Josh said, David, 24 1.4 G Master or Sigma 35 1.4? The 24. Josh, definitely for the wedding. That lens is incredible. A beautiful lens for videography particularly. I'd get the 24. In fact, I may get that lens. It's still not in stores over here yet, though. Altric said, hula Aaron. Casper said, nice, Aaron. Punk said, David, I will be getting booted like I got booted for nothing on Pentex forums. Hero says, will you post tutorials on Patreon? Yes, I certainly will be. I haven't yet. I've just been critiquing photos on there at this stage due to lack of numbers, but it'll grow over a period of time. So as it starts to grow on Patreon, yes, I will be doing live things on there. My intention is eventually, as it grows, to do things like live shoots and do extra things on there. MJ says, Josh, the 24 is amazing. Michael says, Aron J Anderson, I've been watching you for some time now and love the content on your videos. Good work. Aaron just said, thanks, guys. Punk says, for suggesting that digital SLR is on the way out. Norix says, hi, David. Hi, Norix. Aaron says, thanks a bunch, Michael. Conrad says, why doesn't Sony just hire you? Then we would all be happy all the time. Probably because I'm Aussie, Conrad. I've got no idea. Punk says, frankly, I want David to cover these Sony presses face to face. Yeah, I mean, it'd be funny, wouldn't it? They should. And look, I've said this all along to you guys, and I definitely believe it. And I've said this to you before, that Sony should be concentrating more on real photographers for these sessions. And I've said that to you before. Having these people that are in there, and I understand why they're doing it, they want hits. But if they want to be taken seriously, they have to start treating their cameras as serious photography tools. And they should be really using full-on photographers and videographers for that type of work. There's a number of people on those things that are just YouTube reviewers. Look, I'm not having a go at them. They're doing their job. But there's a number of people on those things that are not photographers reviewing it, the camera like they're photographers, and they're not. They're just YouTube reviewers, and I think Sony should change that. And like I said to you, I'll always be honest with you guys. That's just not me there. I'm not saying Sony should be sending me, but they should be sending real photographers to those events. You know, I mean, like if you look at Nikon or Nikon, however you want to pronounce it, you know, they've got all these amazing photographers that they use, like Jerry Guionis and things like that. And you can bet they'd be the ones that they'd be having at their show. And this is half of the problem. This is why sometimes Angry starts to talk about them as a hardware company, because they're not treating... Sometimes Sony don't treat their cameras seriously, and this is a problem. Sometimes they're trying to sell out too much to social media people, and I understand they want the hits, but it doesn't help in some regards. Anyway, that's rant over. What else have we got? Norix said, I mean, we know there's a new Sony press conference. The question is, will they bring the A7000? I mean, I'm ready to go to Fuji already. Fuji have great cameras, and that's why I'm looking forward to this other show. We'll be able to talk about, well, I even talk about that with you guys. Altric says, because Sony only wants yes people. Yeah, you're probably right, Altric. Punk said, NAB, they will announce both. Interesting. Michael said, yes. Michael said, laugh out loud. Punk says, A7000, A7S right after Panny. I don't know if they'll announce both of those together, guys. It'd be silly because I think they take sales away from one another. I think what you're going to find is the A7000 will be first, They'll have a good, say, couple of months or whatever, 3 months on that, sell a bucket load of them, and then when the A7S comes out, they'll also sell a bucket load. I think if they release 2 of those cameras together, they'd take sales away from each other, particularly if the A7000 is quite powerful. So I don't think that would be a good move on Sony to do that, but we'll have to wait and see what's going on there. Thank you for the donation, MJ. Tox Vision says, I don't see another camera company, especially A7000 anytime soon. I don't see how they can announce another camera before the A6400 starts selling. They will need to make returns first. Well, I'm not sure, because if they price that camera at the same price as, say, a Fuji X-T3, which is where I think that camera has to be around, it's got to be priced at that $1,500 US mark, because it has to compare with compete with the X-T3. That's what I believe anyway will happen. There's still a big difference in money, $500-600 between the A6400 and that camera. That really can tell people that are jumping in onto the market. If you're just coming into the market, the A6400 is a great camera. That really is a fantastic camera if you're coming in new and you've got nothing to shoot with. Like I said, a lot of newbies will just go in there, see that it's got that flip-up screen, and they'll purchase it. You're going to get more of the high-ended users who will get the A7000 camera, more of the videographers and things like that, because it's going to have IBIS, obviously, and things like that we need. So I think they won't really take sales from one another. Remember, the A7000 will probably have 4K 60p. We'd hope it does, but it probably will. And then the A6400 has just got your normal 1080 4K 30p. Altric says, yep, and most don't really shoot anything. Yeah, exactly. Norik said, Punk Ratchman Penny, look, I can understand why Sony do what they do with these shows, but I think a far better solution, because I'm sure you're the same, you get sick and tired of looking at the same image on YouTube coming in with everyone that posts on the same day. There's 30 videos showing the same background that they use. I think it'd be far better for Sony to ship these out, like when Tamron did that to me. They gave me the 28-75, posted them out to you or gave them to you, and then you could shoot that, and then every image or every video that comes out is going to look different. I can understand they want a mass release and some quick shooting, but I do think a better release would be to make these guys sign a contract, go out and shoot like real shoots like what I'm going to do tonight, and then upload that, which would make it far more enjoyable for people to watch, instead of looking over at 30 videos all showing the exact same thing. They're not going to change, though. They certainly won't change for what I want, that's for sure. What else have we got? Hero says, I want the 70-200 for the broke budget photographer. And if that's based on the G2, I can tell you that G2 Tamron lens is amazing. So if they can base that lens for the Sony, it's like the Tamron, it's going to be outstanding. It's probably not going to be a light lens, though, like the Tamron, though. Hopefully the A6400 doesn't sell. I think it will. I think it'll still sell pretty well. Last few before... Oh, Norix, thank you so much for that donation, mate. Really appreciate it. What else have we got? No, I haven't talked about Olympus yet. I'm just going through these things. Camera Conspiracies is on here. G'day, mate. How you going? Love your video on the Olympus. If you haven't looked at that, check that out after you've finished here. Classic. What else have we got? I'm just trying to go through these a bit quicker because we'll be here all day. Punk says the new cameras will come with a $200 price drop on the A7 III to compete with Panasonic. Interesting. Do you think Sony will reduce the price of the A9 again soon? I don't think so. Not now that that firmware update has come out, Conrad. I think that's locked in for the year. You can still get it for $4,400 Australian, though, which is $1,000 off at the moment due to Sony selling it cheaper at the moment. Punk said Sony is going to get serious about video. No price reduction on the A9 until Black Friday. I don't think they'll do that now that that price has come down. So you won't get that now that the A9 has got that new firmware update coming out. Ray says, hello, Mr. Oastler. Can't wait for the Camera Conspiracies roast. Thank you for your time and consideration. What else have we got? When will you make a camera conspiracies video? You guys put pressure on. Can't wait for my roast. You know, I'll have to tell you guys, it's so funny. Look at me, I'm going red because it's so hot today. The funny thing was, when I posted that video, you know, the one I'm talking about, the roast, I immediately saw that Angry had started a live broadcast. And I laughed because I switched over. And people were all saying in his show, David Oastler has put up a roasting video of you. And he was, I'm not going to say what he said, but I was laughing my head off because he was basically saying that wanker. That Aussie wanker or something. I can't remember what his exact terms were, but it was so funny. I was killing myself laughing, looking at him basically saying that. And everyone kept saying, check out David's video. And he was saying, why is everyone telling everyone to go and look at... Oh, it was so funny. It was just a coincidence that he came on live just after I posted it. It was a classic. Let's have a look down here. Michael says, I have a question. Why in 2019 would anyone want to shoot pictures with a micro four thirds sensor? Yeah, I'm going to talk about that in a minute, Michael. Oreo says, what if the Mini A9 that Sony mentioned months ago was really the A6400? You don't know, Oreo. Could be. Could be. Jason said, did you see Olympus tried to make Sony look bad but backfired? No, I didn't. Altric said, oh my God, your channel is way too funny, Camera Conspiracies. Yeah, it's my favourite channel, actually. I always go on and check his videos out. HD Edit says, currently using the Sigma 14 to 24 2.8 and haven't had any issues, but debating on selling the lens for the 16 to 35 GM. Interesting. Aaron said, I so agree about using real photographers. Ori said, Camera Conspiracies, I love the camera dignity video. I know, it's so funny. People don't know how to handle him because he tells the truth, and that's what I love about him, you know. He does it with humour, but he's not selling out, and that's fantastic, why I love it so much. Camera Conspiracies, David, can you describe the full frame look that you love so much? What makes full frame so magical? Is it mostly shallow depth of field, or is there more to it? Okay, so, well... It is, I know we've had a discussion about this because you actually mentioned it in one of your videos about the 5.6. If I do like to shoot wide open, there is a massive difference in depth of field. I did used to have the GH5 and I have shot with that showing amazing depth of field. And that was because I was using, I think it was a 1.2 or something lens. It was a really fast lens. And the depth of field did look really quite nice. Sometimes, particularly if I'm doing portraits, and I want to blow away that background, I do like to have a really shallow depth of field. But that's the look that you get. It gives you a certain look when you're looking at that image. Say if you're shooting at 2.8, it is a real 2.8. Now the equivalent on using micro four thirds, for instance, you're going to have something like a 1.2 or something like that lens because of the crop factor involved inside that. So it's hard to get that real shallow depth of field look. You can get some there, but it's hard to get that separation between your foreground and the background. But that's not really, that is the look that I love. But the real difference between the two of them is the noise. That is the main difference between that's the main reason I sold the GH5. I had issues when I was shooting in things like receptions, low light in weddings and things like that. The second you went up to anything sort of over 1600 ISO, even that was pretty bad. You started to get real grain becoming an issue. And I've noticed even the new Olympus has that same issue. You're talking about that tiny sensor if you compare it to full frame sensors. So that's the issue. And I used to shoot all the time with the GH5. I shooted with it quite extensively for a while and didn't mind the look at all. But it definitely looked different than what the full frame look was. Now, like I said, it's not massive, but if you do want to shoot wide open, and all of my videos, like if you're looking at the ones I've shot of Kiara, all things like that, I'm shooting at 1.8. I usually shoot with the 55 at 1.8, and that everyone has commented how filmic that looks, how beautiful it is, throwing that background out. And it's that look that I love so much that you can't get with the GH5 because the lens you haven't got that lens for the GH5 or Micro Four Thirds. So that's the problem with that. So I hope that answers with it. It's not saying they're bad, but it just looks different enough for me that I like that full frame look, but particularly the noise. Gerald said, sorry, mate. Gerald here, cheers. Good to see you and here, Gerald. My new A9's here on Monday. You're going to love it, Gerald. Mad Photographer says, camera conspiracies, it's impossible to describe. It's magical and elusive, almost, whatever that is. Theistic, is it? I'm not sure what that word means. Australian, that's too complex for me. Let me just go down. Punk says, you are totally right about sending lenses via mail. Sony's marketing department is wasting everyone's time and all kinds of airplane fuel on nothing but press conferences. Their marketing department's asleep. You're going to get me in trouble. I've got no chance of being employed by Sony now, have I? Oreo said, I'm taking everyone to one Sony event actually exposes the differences between the reviewers and how they can handle things, and that's quite interesting to know. Yeah, it's just the footage tends to get boring, Oreo, though. I don't watch most of it because I get bored. Pug said, yeah, Aussie, but we are at the critical juncture in tech. The next generation will truly have... different due to computational photography, and I'm going to talk about the Olympus in a minute. All right, let's go to the next story. And camera conspiracies, I'd love to know what you think about what I said about that. Do you think I'm right, or do you think I'm wrong? I'd love to know what you think about that, because I'm curious to know. I mean, you've shot a lot too with the Panasonics as well. Let me know what you think about what I said. What's Michael said there? Camera Conspiracies has me on the floor. David loves the 1D pop that comes out from f16 on the 1.4 lens. I love it. All right, let's go next story, because this is really interesting. This is talking about the comparison of the new E-M1X. If you haven't watched Camera Conspiracies video, though, go and watch that, guys. I'm not going to make this too long, but I just wanted to talk to you about some of the specs on this. The body size is huge. I mean, if you look at the body size, say, compared to the A9, it really is massive. Now, I know a lot of sports photographers are probably going to like that because they don't like the A9 body size, but you can always put the grip on if you want a similar size. But you look at the size itself, and it's massive. I mean, it really is large for the type of sensor that it's got in there, and watch Camera Conspiracies video because you'll understand what his video is about. But let's look at some of the specs about this, and then I'm going to talk about it briefly to you. Obviously, the Olympus is Micro Four Thirds. The Sony A9 is full frame. The megapixel is 20.2. The Sony's 24 megapixel. 4K 30, 4K 30p video, so that's comparable. ISO is where it starts to fall down though, because it's ISO 200. The maximum is 25/600. Now, I noticed that, like I said, really, if you have a GH5 or any of that, and I shot extensively with that camera, if you start to push over 1600, it really starts to show noise. I could sometimes notice it even at ISO 800, I mean. And it really is a problem with the GH5, and it's the same sensor. If you look at the reviews out there, like if you look at Tony Northrup's review, if you look at Jared Poland's review, they're all showing that nothing has changed in that regard. So, you know, that's a problem with that camera. And I'll summarize this near the end that we can talk about. The electric viewfinder apparently is terrible. I haven't seen it, obviously. Jared Poland says that it looks like one of the old LCD screens from years ago. The A7 III LCD is not amazing, but I'll be curious to know how much different that is as compared to the A7 III. But it's definitely nowhere near the A9. Also, the back LCD is awful as well if you're counting the number of dots on that compared to the Sony A9. The touchscreen, though, at least this has a fully articulating screen. Good on Olympus for giving that, and I really wish Sony would wake up, and there's no reason why they can't give us that. I mean, you keep hearing that Canon's got the patent on it, but I can't believe that's true when other cameras are bringing that out like Olympus have. So that's fantastic. They've got this fully articulating screen, even though it's crap, because they're saying the resolution's terrible. At least they've still got it. It does 18 frames per second. I believe it does 60 or some ridiculous figure if you do electronic shutter or some other thing. It's got 20 frames per second full frame, though, on the A9. In-body stabilization, which I believe is nuts, and I'll summarize this in a minute. The A9 has in-body stabilization. The weather sealing also will be better on the Olympus than it will be on the Sony A9. And they're talking about weight through here. So I'm going to sort of talk about this now as a general thing. I'm a little bit confused about what this camera is for. I would have thought it probably would have been a bit smarter on Olympus to release or try and do what Panasonic did and bring out a full-frame version of this camera. If they're marketing this camera, which, remember, this is priced at a high-end camera. This camera is the same price for me in Australia as what the A9 is at the moment. So that's how they are comparable at the moment. They're on parity, which is really interesting. So I don't understand if Olympus are pointing this towards like a sports shooting camera. It's not tailored for sports shooting. This is the interesting thing, because the problem is sports shooters. Now, look, I'm not a sports shooter, and you can pull me apart here if you want to, but I'm still a photographer, and I know what I'm talking about things like shutter speed and things. Sports shooters particularly want to shoot at quite a high shutter speed because they want to freeze the motion. There's no point grabbing a gridiron player or a football player, going to kick the ball or whatever they're doing if that image is blurry. No one is ever going to buy that in any minute. Now, the only way you can really get that is to use a high aperture and up your ISO. So the problem here is that you need lenses that are 2.8 lenses. This is why Sony have brought out the 400 2.8. Well, you've got nothing on the Canon on the Olympus side that is the equivalent of a 70-200 2.8. I think the best that they can do is you've got a 70-200, but it's about a 5.6 if you take the crop factor, that problem into account. So that's an issue. So then the issue is, if you say shooting at the equivalent of 5.6, you're going to lose that separation that they love to get, where the crowd is blurred in the background. Also, you're going to have to lower your shutter speed. If you don't lower your shutter speed, you're going to have to raise your ISO up to a ridiculous amount. We already know that if you push the ISO on that camera, it's going to show noise really badly because it's a micro four thirds camera that you just can't get around physics. And this is the problem with that. So there's issues with this camera, I believe, on that regard. It seems like it's got great autofocus, and I don't know why Panasonic don't bring in phase detection. Olympus have done that. I can't understand why Panasonic don't bring in phase detection. So that's really interesting in itself. So Olympus have solved the focus. I'm not saying it's going to be as good as the A9. I haven't used it, so I can't comment on that yet. People have said in the reviews that it seems to be good, not as good as the A9, but it seems to be quite capable. So that's really good. But, like I said, I'm confused about the marketing for this. I don't think this is going to sell very well at all, due to the fact that you've got the micro four thirds sensor, you haven't got the sports lenses that you need. They have got that focal range, but they haven't got the aperture range. This is the problem. And you're going to have to up the shutter speed and the ISO. It's not going to work. Now, yes, the weather sealing is going to be incredible. The embodied stabilization, I haven't seen that. I know Jared Poland talked about it, and I think Tony Northrup talked about it. That it's incredible. And now I can tell you, because I have used the other Olympus mirrorless, and they are by far the best stabilization of any camera out there. The GH5 is second. The GH5 was unbelievable in tripod mode, but the Olympus is better. It's rated at 7.7 stops, or some ridiculous figure, which means you could handhold this and do a shutter probably at 4 seconds or some ridiculous figure and still get it very, very sharp. It uses things like AI to do incredible things of combining multiple images together in camera. So again, that's an incredible feature. It's using all of these things like AI built in. It's only a matter of time until Sony and everyone else gets on board with this, And AI is the future, and I've discussed that before. But Olympus are giving you some amazing technology in this camera. They really are. But none of that technology helps what this camera is there for, which is sport shooting. Because you can't use any of those technology of stitching to give you better images and things like that on anything that moves. It will only be good for real estate or for landscape shooting. So I'm confused about the market for this. And let me know if you think I'm right or wrong. But I'm a little bit confused. The video looked a bit soft to me in the samples, but like I said, I haven't seen that yet come out. It certainly didn't look like the A9 video or the A7 III, or even the GH5. I don't think the video is a comparison to that. But I'm a little bit confused. So I'm going to open it up to the chat because I'd love to know too what you guys think about that. Are you confused about this as well? You know, do you think it's going to sell? I mean, am I wrong, or do you think I'm right? We just come down to here. Delta Dave says, whoops. Delta Dave says, how can anyone tout the full frame look while at the same time diminishing the advantages of medium format? Good point, Dave. The problem for me, Dave, when I used to shoot medium format, I love that. I love the look of that camera. But the problem was for me, it was too slow. That's the difference for me. If you're doing shoots, like I said, in studio, or where things are very methodical, like I said, I used to shoot medium format in studio, fantastic, and you can't beat the image quality for that. The problem is, though, that they're not good if you're dealing with working fast, like doing weddings, doing events, portraits where you're outside and you've got to move very quickly. Medium format is not good for that type of system. The stabilization, not good. It's not there usually. So there are issues that I'm talking about with medium format for me that I don't like. Does anyone still rate the A7 III as the entry point into the Sony system? No, I don't. I think the A7 III is the full frame entry point. Sony have also admitted that. They said it was their low-end full frame camera. I wouldn't be buying the A7 III now. Gerald says there is a Sony Instant 500 rebate plus 500 trade-in rebate of 900 in the USA. Yeah, I noticed it's still $1,000 off here on the Sony store. I looked just before. Just had the power back, so missed your show. Up now, Buggy. I hope I don't get a power blackout. If it does disappear, this thing, guys, it's because it's so hot today, and everyone's got their air conditioning on, and I believe it's struggling. Like I said, we're still 43 degrees Celsius, which is about 106 or 105 or something. 42 Pros says, Gerald, thanks for the info and immediate hit my bank account. Andrew said, interesting, the tech has gone up, but the camera looks like a wannabe disco Inferno Acca Nikon Gold block, haha. The thing is, and everyone's different, I understand that, but I love the size of the A9. I really do love the size of this. I've got the battery grip and I never use it. I should sell it. I can understand some people do want that, and if you do want it, you can put the battery grip on. I like to travel minimalistically, so I like the camera being small. Mark said, building a Micro Four Thirds with vertical grip is ridiculous. Shaloin says, the Olympus is so ridiculous they are charging high 3K for a Micro Four Thirds camera. Yeah, I don't know if it's going to sell. Trev said, Tony Northrup is not a video guy. Noise on the GH5 is absolutely not a problem when you correctly exposing. It used to be a problem for me, Trev. The problem for me was I was trying to use it with the full frame Sony cameras, and I can tell you it was nothing like it at all. Nothing like the noise I could get on the full frame Sony cameras. Even the A6300 and the A6500 have much better noise than the GH5, much better. Punk said, having already watched all the reviews of the Olympus today, I'm glad I'm here to laugh at this monstrosity injured death of Micro Four Thirds. Yeah, they probably should have gone full frame. It's interesting why they didn't do that. Charlene says, haha, the GH5 is super noisy at any decent high ISO. Don't be a fanboy. Gerald said, the Olympus 60 frames per second is with no AF and no exposure change. No, so it does do 60 frames. Oh, yeah, that's the shooting. Yes, you're right. Yeah, it focuses on that first frame, and then it won't focus after that. Yep. I'm just trying to read what other people said. Aaron said, because of the... Oh, where'd it go? Aaron said, because of the 2x crop on the Olympus is great for small, long lenses. That's about it. Good for wildlife, but then the noise can still be killing the image. Yep. If that camera was an APS-C camera with those specs, it might be a killer, but Micro Four Thirds kills the camera at least at that price. Yeah, I think I'm tending to agree with you guys. Shaku said, I agree with you wholeheartedly. Why would you buy a Micro Four Thirds camera that is the price as the D9, D850 and the A7 III, 5D Mark 1V, and more than 1,000 more than the A7 III? Yeah, I think they're nuts as well. There's no way known I'll be buying that camera. Not a chance. Mark said the whole mirrorless market seems to be getting desperate. Every manufacturer seems to be bringing out something to catch up the wave. Yeah, you're probably right. Gerald said Olympus is pitching this for wildlife shooters. Yeah, but anything that moves, Gerald, again, it's going to be a problem. I suppose if you're shooting in daylight, it'll be all right. Lanx is just saying evening. Gerald says the Olympus Ambassador Shooters video showed sports shots and wildlife and landscape shots shooting with this camera. Yep. Michael said Sony needs to buy Olympus Ibis, but not their weather sealing because it looks like that black box out of a B-2 bomber they just made. See, Panasonic's weather sealing though in the GH5 is incredible. Everything was really nicely sealed on that camera with rubber seals. Sony does have an awful lot to learn in the weather sealing department, that's for sure. Aaron said, I had my Panasonic G9. I've seen many wildlife shots on different groups, and it's the noise that killed the IQ. So the Olympus being a wildlife camera, good luck. Bradley said, did you say you wouldn't buy an A7? No, not an A7 III. It was an A7 II, Bradley. I'd definitely buy the A7 III. Yeah, for sure. Hunter said, do you think we will see Sony 14mm anytime soon? I'm hoping Sony brings out a wide-angle lens. I don't know if we'll see it fairly soon, though, at all. All right, so let's go to the next story. Guys, if you do want to get my attention too, put the @David Oastler because it does make it stand out. Why didn't that work? Oh, there we go. All right, next story is interesting because this is amazing. I don't know whether any of you read this story during the week, but it's talking... Now, I'm not going to go through all this because it would be boring as all hell. If you're a techie guy, you might want to have a look at the link for this afterwards and check the figures out. But I had some really interesting thing. Let me just open this up because I wanted to discuss a couple of things with you about this. So Sony Rumors have announced this full, or they've grabbed this. The Sony full frame sensor sheet is now available, and you can go through the whole sheet if you want to do that. It's quite interesting to sort of have a look through. I don't understand a lot of the stuff that's there, but I wanted to talk to you about a couple of things. It appears that this sensor, the A9 sensor, is I mean, I said to you all along, there's nothing like this sensor out there. It is incredible how good this sensor actually is. And really, I'm now starting to believe the only thing holding it back is probably the processor. Because let me read this out to you, because this was interesting when I checked out some of the things that were there. And I wanted to... This is from a comment that someone who's read all about this has said. There's one part of this where part of it is mentioned that there's... I'm just reading this off my iPhone. There's part of this where it says that there is... the sensor has a 16-bit global reset shutter. Now, that doesn't... I don't know if that means that it's a global shutter. It might just be that it actually is still just your normal shutter, but that's something that's just termed in there. But that's not the interesting thing. The interesting thing is, and this blows my mind, that this says that the A9 sensor has on-chip dual gain, HDR, 96 dB dynamic range. Right, now that's one part of it, all right, but let me also read this to you, because this is the incredible bit about it. It It is annoying, though, this is what this person's wrote, that the sensor is capable of 14-bit video. So they're saying that this A9 sensor is capable of 14-bit video. Now, that's incredible in itself. The other thing is, too, it says it's also capable of 14-bit stills. So this is incredible. So not only does this have this dual gain HDR 96 dB dynamic range sensor on there, it's also got 14-bit video, and it's also got a 14-bit stills locked into that sensor. Now, obviously the processor probably can't take it at this stage. This blows my mind in the fact of what on earth is the Sony A9 II going to get when they probably have a processor that may unlock some of those features. And that's probably the only thing holding that back at this stage is the processor. Now remember, the problem is that Sony are not Intel. Sony can't produce sensors at the rate that Intel can produce sensors. So you're probably finding that the A9 and the A7 III, the A6 400 probably all have a very similar sensor. Some may be clocked down due to the fact that they do still want to sell the higher rated cameras, but you probably will find inside there that they're all very similar in their processor. That's the difference. The clear difference here is that the actual sensor on the A9 is that advanced still that then they haven't even tapped into what that sensor can do now. So clearly, if they had another processor that was capable of doing that, they wouldn't even need to change that sensor by the look of what people are saying. That they could just add a processor that could unlock some of those other possibilities, and then you'd have, say, 14-bit video and 14-bit stills. I mean, that's incredible when you read that discussion that was going on there. So I'd love to know what you guys think. You might get some tech savvy people that will read that, and let me know in the comment box down below what you think about what that sensor is capable of doing, because I'd love to have that in the discussion as well. But boy, is that, you know, an incredible sensor that we've got in that. Like I said, there's nothing for it that can compete with it for rolling shutter. The silent shutter on that is the only sensor that I would recommend to do that, full frame sensor anyway, to shoot in silent shutter without having any rolling shutter at all. I've never experienced that. I've never had banding show up on that. The video I've still said to you, I believe, is the best video that Sony produces, because you can shoot in full frame without penalty loss. It's stunning, and I believe it's better than my A7 III in video. I love the look that it gives me. The autofocus, particularly on that now that we're going to get tracking on the A9, is just outstanding. We're going to get the real-life tracking in the eyes, plus real-life tracking as well, like the A6 400 does, but only better. I can't wait to see where this goes. It does probably mean that we're not going to see another A9 release this year, though. So that's an issue. I think you're going to find that now the A9 will be with us for the whole year, and they'll probably release an A9 II for the start of next year. Now, I'm just going to go quickly through the next story, and then I'll open up chat. Let me just come over here. Really appreciate it too, guys, if you could give me a thumbs up as well. I just want to go through this because I noticed Sigma have released another firmware update for the MC-11. So if you haven't updated that now is available. I believe that they've added, I'm not going to go through this whole thing with you, but they've added more compatibility with different lenses, the 24-35, the 500, and the 18-35 as well. And there's some other ones down here that they've added on too. So I just wanted to sort of mention that if you've got the MC-11, update to the latest firmware. So that's available. So let's go anyway to Q&A. Let me just open this up. Q&A. Let me just put the Q&A up through here. And let me open up that window. All right, so we'll have a quick Q&A, and then how is the temperature? Oh, it's still hot. I hope this cools down before tonight. I've got to shoot tonight. Hopefully the cool change comes through. All right, so let's see what people are saying. Trev said there are no pros shooting on Micro Four Third bodies. There are a lot of pros shooting on Micro Four Third bodies and doing fine. Langston says, don't forget to thumbs up. Thanks, Langston. Gerald says, David, Tony Northrup did an extensive wet and frozen sealing test on the A7 and the A9, and the Sony withstood the deluge and ice as well as a new Olympus. Yeah, it did, but I think over time, Gerald, you can't deny that the Sony is not as weather sealed as what that will be, or even the GH5. The issue is and I can tell you what it is, it's the seals, the problem are everything that you open on the Sony does not have gaskets that are on the outside. These little things on this side is a potential area where something can get in. On the Panasonic and on the Olympus, they all have rubber gaskets. I love Sony, but I'm not going to lie and say the weather sealing is good. It's not. Doesn't mean you'll get your camera damaged if you're out in the rain, no. But there is a potential for leakage due to the fact that they don't have the rubber seals around those port areas. Trev said, people are winning photos awards with cell phones. I think we're getting too much into the weeds with technology. Michael says, surrender. No, maybe A9 too. I've given up on PP in the A9 one. Yeah, I don't think we're going to get picture profiles, Michael. I don't use them anyway, so I'm not bothered about that at all. I'm much happy about getting the tracking. That's what interests me far more. Terry says, if Olympus made a full frame, I would be also over that baby. It's a pity they didn't go down that line. I think it's going to hurt them now, and I think Panasonic will hurt them. No, not a global shutter. Yeah, it's not a global shutter. It's the interesting terminology that they talk about there. 42 Pro says, will Sony start a new direction with their cameras by overbuilding them initially and later give us the full potential of the sensor camera via firmware? Maybe, and I hope they do that. I really hope they do now start to improve things with their firmware like they just have, and I think that's going to happen now due to the competition that's out there. Aaron says that A9 sensor will show up again in another Sony cameras. It probably will. Casper says, love my A9, so do I. It's still my favourite camera. What else have we got? Do you reckon Sony next full frame will have 4K 60? Yes, I do, Tim. I believe the next full frame definitely will have will have the 4K 60. May have more, we don't know. Sony did say that they're going to surprise us and exceed expectations. So we just have to wait and see. Terry says the A9 is good for another year. Easily, it's good for another couple of years, Terry. It's that good, that camera, particularly with that new update. G'day, Photomiak. Gerald says, do you still feel we will get all three this year? Possibly. I do believe we'll get the A7000 and the A7S III. We may not get an A7R. I still tip that we might get that at the end of the year, though, the A7R update, and I believe the A9 the start of next year. Panda's here. G'day, Panda. Florio says, this Olympus, it might be good for some, but not for me. I need full frame. John said, DP review shows that ProRes rocks great, but it takes time to process, during which you can't shoot. I think Tony touched on that too. What else have we got? DL says, David, I may be in Melbourne in April for work and would love to buy you a coffee. Oh, contact me, DL, and we'll see if we can do a meetup. Tim said, so maybe even 4K 120. Maybe, Tim. That would be fantastic. You just don't know. Gerald says, do you think the A6400 will mean no flip-out screen? Yes, I do, Gerald. Unfortunately, I could be proven wrong. I think Sony are going to push you back to the A6400 now if you want to vlog. That's the downside to this. I don't think we're going to see it in the next cameras. I could be proven wrong, and I hope I am wrong, but I do believe that's what's going to happen. And I noticed Camera Conspiracies also did a video about that as well. I don't think we're going to see it. I hope I'm wrong, though. I hope so much. And that's the end of that chat. A couple of people will put some more in there. Please, guys, if you haven't, I have got Patreon now, so if you want to join me on Patreon, please join me there. There's also PayPal if you want to donate and support the channel that way. If you'd like to go that way too. I am doing a shoot tonight, so stay tuned for that. I will be filming that. A gorgeous girl that I'm photographing around the Docklands in Melbourne, so stay tuned for that. Really excited about that. Can't wait to show you that too coming up. Apart from that too, don't forget to tune in next week on Wednesday US time, Tuesday my time, for the latest show, the new show that we're going to be launching, myself and Aaron. So stay tuned for that. I will put Aaron's link underneath. So please subscribe to Aron if you haven't, because one week I'll be hosting the show. The next week, Aron will be hosting the show as well. So can't wait to get you all involved with that one. I think you're going to find it's a great chat amongst mates with some really interesting topics. So stay tuned for that. All right, guys. That's all for now. I better start getting ready for the shoot that I'm doing this afternoon. And I'll catch you all for the next video. Bye for now.